Today I take you to Vigevano. It's only 45 minutes far from Milan, very easy to reach. This town has an ancient heart that remained intact from the Renaissance. It has the heart of the dukes who loved Vigevano, the Visconti and the Sforzas. Leonardo da Vinci stayed in Vigevano as guest and as ducal engineer for Ludovico Sforza, called il Moro. He worked for the Duke for over 20 years. He drew and accomplished a network of canals, mills, and the first model of a Lombard farmhouse. The cathedral is dedicated to Saint Ambrose, Bishop of Milan. It was set under the Duke Francesco II Sforza in 1532 by the design of architect Antonio de Lonate, and it was completed in 1606. The inside is quite beautiful, as you can see. It is home to important works of art. It contains silver and gold reliquary of the Lombard school and the vestment used for crowning of Napoleon Bonaparte. Piazza Ducale was built between 1492 and 1494 for the wishes of Ludovico il Moro. It's one of the most representative squares of Italian Renaissance, the best example of the 15th century architecture. The piazza was created to ennoble the city. Vigevano had to become the residence of the dukedom, where ambassadors, politicians, and other dukes, kings could be invited, also for political reasons. The Piazza Ducale is surrounded by porticos and arches. A few steps and we are in the castle courtyard, where the Renaissance Fair is taking place. Here are the stables. The stables are a beautiful example of Leonardo da Vinci's ability to create, of his rational mind and his genius applied to his modern architecture and artistic taste. Today also the stables host the fair, with a medieval market, traditional local products and craft of Renaissance and medieval time. Lombardy has a strong craftsman tradition, and Vigevano has important manufacturing tradition connected to fashion, but the key sector is shoemaking. Very high quality of shoes, leather and handmade. And stiletto heel, did you know, was invented in this town. Food served at the fair is prepared like in ancient times, with dark flour, full grain cereals, homemade and home cooked, and old recipes. The castle, a stronghold, was transformed under Ludovico il Moro. Prior, it was a fortification and hunting lodge of Luchino Visconti, who reused a Lombard fortress and made it into a rich noble residence in Gothic and Renaissance style. Il Moro, the Moor, planned to transform Vigevano town in a second Milan. That was the reason why Bramante and Leonardo spent so much time in both cities. Leonardo designed the ideal city inspired by Vigevano. The castle in Piazza Ducale had to be the architectural model for the urban development of a modern city. It's attributed to architect Bramante, La Falconiera, the Falconry, an elegant open arcade supported by 48 columns that was used for practicing of falconry. In rear is the ladies' loggia made for Beatrice d'Este. It's called Palio delle Contrade, 2 days of celebration of historical reenactment with medieval games. Saturday night and evening is animated by historical dancers, jugglers, and fire shows. And I was not here, but today, Sunday, will be beautiful. The Palio was an amazing event for people during the Sforza time. All the guilds were called for the competition of medieval games. During Renaissance, games became very important, as all the creative arts, history, science, botany, and magic. Wedding, funerals, hunting were considered occasions for games and entertainment. Vigevano was a Ghibelline commune, but it was besieged and occupied by the Milanese, and in 1328 it surrendered to Azzone Visconti, and from that time it shared its fortune with Milan. As I mentioned, Luchino Visconti was Lord of Milan and ruler of Vigevano since 1337. He began the transformation of the existing fortification to make it a local residence for his family. The works were continued by Gian Galeazzo Visconti and completed by his heirs Ludovico il Moro and his grandchild Gian Galeazzo Sforza. At the end of the 15th century, Beatrice d'Este, wife of Ludovico il Moro, lived in the castle, and she gave prestige to Vigevano. The last ruler of the dynasty, Francesco II Sforza, died in Vigevano in 1535. And after the end of the Sforza dynasty, under the Spanish regime, Vigevano slowly declined. During the Renaissance, the court was often a place of entertainment, where members of the aristocracy engaged in tournaments, hunting, feasting, and games, with sumptuous dresses. All the settings and decorations were designed to impress. And all that just to reaffirm their prestige and status. Fashion and clothing played an important part of Renaissance life. There were different kind of laws and rules about clothing. Depending on their rank in the society, people could wear only clothes of certain colors and certain materials. The majority of people wore woolen clothing, and if they had undergarments, they were made of linen. For the peasantry, it was a whole different story. Wool was generally shorn from the sheep and spun by the family. Dyes were common, so even the lower class could use colorful clothing. They used plants, roots, tree bark, nuts, crushed insect. Every color can be done. The red color was made by crushing coccinilla, a Mediterranean insect. Fabrics for wealthy women were silk, satin, velvet, taffeta, brocade, cotton, linen, twill and wool, obviously. Middle-class ladies instead generally wore green, black, gray, yellow, violet, pink colors. Any colors that were easily extracted from berries or plants. The main fabrics for their clothing were cotton, linen, twill, and of course wool as well. Fabrics with brightest and richest and more colorful were generally often found for the nobility and the very rich. Sheepskin and woolen hats were worn in wintertime. Jewelry, and not only for women, was lavish. Gem cutting had not to be invented until the 15th century. Diamonds became popular in Europe in the 14th century. Silk, in all its shapes and forms and designs, was the most luxurious fabric available, and it was so costly that only the upper classes and churchmen could afford it. Europeans imported silks also from India and the Far East. The fabric was so costly anyway that it was used also and reserved for church ceremonies and decorations. Silk production started in Europe when factories were set up in France in the 15th century. At times, women needed to be dressed according to the position of their fathers or husbands.
A seguire un gruppo di damigelle e di nobili della corte di Francesco I
And the
e Bianca Maria,
craftsmen
gli
and yeomen's
amati
wives were not to
guidati
wear silk veils, or the use of fur was confined to the ladies of knights only with a rental above a certain amount of money a year. The sumptuary laws obviously changed from country to country, but they were made to distinguish social categories and made members of each class easily be distinguished by their clothing. Even guilds members distinguished themselves by their clothing with different colors and different designs. There were also different styles of dresses. It depends if you were Italian, English, Scottish, Spanish, French, or any other country. To the next trip. Ciao!